The bullet missed Preston Calloway's head by inches, close enough that he felt the heat of its singe past his ear as he dove behind the overturned wagon in the middle of Loveland's dusty Main Street. Texas heat beat down mercilessly on this August afternoon in 1878, and sweat stung his eyes as he fumbled to reload his revolver, while angry shouts echoed from the saloon where three men had decided they wanted his horse more than he did. "Come on out, Cowboy," one of the thieves called. "We just want the stallion. No need for anyone to die today." Preston wiped his face with his sleeve and considered his options, none of them particularly appealing. He had ridden into Loveland just an hour ago, planning only to rest his horse and grab supplies before continuing north to his family's ranch. The small Texas town seemed peaceful enough, nestled in the rolling hills with its handful of wooden buildings and dirt roads. He had not expected trouble, but trouble had a way of finding him regardless of his intentions. Another shot rang out, this one splintering the wood near his shoulder. Preston cursed under his breath. His black stallion, Thunder, stood tied to the post outside the general store, completely unaware that his life had just become the subject of a violent disagreement. Preston had raised that horse from a foal, and he would be damned if he let some drifters steal him now. The sound of running footsteps made him tense, but then he heard a woman's voice, sharp and commanding. "What in God's name is going on out here? This is a civilized town, not some lawless outpost." Preston risked a glance around the wagon and saw a woman standing in the doorway of what appeared to be a schoolhouse. She wore a simple blue dress, her dark hair pinned up in a practical style, and she held a broom like it was a weapon. Even from this distance, he could see the fire in her eyes. "Get back inside, madam," he called out. "This does not concern you." "It concerns me when gunfire interrupts my afternoon," she shot back, not moving an inch. "I have had quite enough of you men and your ridiculous pride. Someone is going to get killed over what, a horse?" One of the thieves laughed, a mean sound that made Preston's jaw tighten. "Lady, you best listen to the cowboy and get yourself inside before you catch a stray bullet." The woman's expression hardened. She stepped fully into the street, broom still in hand, and marched straight toward the saloon with the kind of fearlessness that made Preston's heart skip a beat for reasons that had nothing to do with the danger of the situation. He had seen men with guns show less courage. "Madam, please," Preston said, more urgently now. He could not let this brave, foolish woman walk into the line of fire. Without thinking, he bolted from behind the wagon and intercepted her, grabbing her arm and pulling her back toward cover as another shot cracked through the air. They tumbled together behind a water trough, and Preston positioned himself between her and the saloon, his body shielding hers. "Are you insane?" he hissed, his face inches from hers. Up close, he could see that her eyes were the color of amber, bright and intelligent and currently blazing with indignation. "Are you?" she countered. "Fighting over a horse in the middle of town. They tried to steal him. What was I supposed to do? Let them?" "You were supposed to get the sheriff, not stage a shootout like some dime novel hero." Preston opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again because she had a point. In his defense, everything had happened very quickly. He had been walking Thunder to the stable when the three men had approached him, initially friendly enough. Then one had grabbed Thunder's reins while another pulled a gun, and instinct had taken over. He had thrown himself aside, drawn his own weapon, and found cover while the thieves retreated to the saloon. "The sheriff is not here," Preston said finally. "I saw a notice on his office door saying he is out tracking cattle rustlers." The woman muttered something under her breath that sounded decidedly unladylike. "Of course he is. Mr. Henderson picks the most inconvenient times to actually do his job." She peered around the trough, assessing the situation with surprising calm. "There are 3 of them, correct?" "Yes, madam." "And they are not the talking type." "Everyone is the talking type if you know what to say." Before Preston could stop her, she cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, "Gentlemen, I am Zelda Jennings, schoolteacher of this town. If you shoot anyone today, you will have to answer to every mother in Loveland, and I promise you that is a far worse fate than anything the law could do to you." Silence followed her declaration. Preston stared at her in disbelief. Zelda Jennings met his gaze with a slight raise of her eyebrows as if daring him to comment. Then, impossibly, one of the thieves called back, "We do not want trouble with the town, lady. We just want the horse." "Well, you cannot have him," Zelda replied, her tone brooking no argument. "That horse belongs to this man, and theft is both illegal and immoral. I suggest you ride out of Loveland right now, and we will forget this entire incident ever happened." More silence. Preston could hardly believe this was happening. The woman had more nerve than most men he knew, facing down armed thieves with nothing but a broom and sheer audacity. "What about the cowboy?" another thief asked. "He shot at us first." "Only after you tried to steal his property," Zelda called back. "Self-defense is perfectly reasonable. Now, are you going to leave peacefully, or do I need to ring the schoolhouse bell and summon the entire town? I assure you, you do not want to face an angry mob of Texans." Preston saw movement through the saloon's dirty windows. The thieves were conferring among themselves. He reloaded his revolver quietly, just in case Zelda's gambit did not work. He had to admit, though, her approach was working better than his had. Finally, the leader of the group emerged from the saloon, hands raised to show they were empty. "We are leaving. No need to involve the whole town." "Wise decision," Zelda said. She stood up from behind the trough, brushing dust from her dress with remarkable composure. Preston rose beside her, his gun still drawn but pointed at the ground. He watched warily as the 3 men mounted their horses and rode out of town, kicking up dust in their wake. Only when they had disappeared over the hill did Zelda turn to face him fully. Now that the immediate danger had passed, Preston could take in her features properly. She was beautiful in an unconventional way, with strong features and an expression that suggested she did not suffer fools gladly. He guessed she was around his age, maybe 24 or 25 to his 26 years. "Thank you," he said, holstering his weapon. "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I have ever seen." "It was practical," Zelda corrected. "Gunfights solve nothing except who bleeds out fastest. Talking, on the other hand, allows both parties to walk away intact." She looked him over critically. "You are not hurt?" "No, madam." "Thanks to you." Preston offered his hand. "Preston Calloway, I apologize for bringing trouble to your town." Zelda shook his hand with a firm grip that surprised him. "Zelda Jennings, as you heard, and the trouble was not yours to apologize for." Those men were clearly drifters looking for easy targets. She glanced toward the general store, where Thunder stood patiently. "That is a magnificent horse. I can see why they wanted him." "He is my best friend," Preston said simply. "I have had him since he was born. My father breeds horses on our ranch up north." "The Calloway Ranch." Zelda's expression shifted, showing recognition. "I have heard of it. Your family is well respected in these parts. You know of us. Everyone in Loveland knows of the Calloway Ranch. Your father sold horses to half the ranchers in the county." She paused, studying him with those sharp amber eyes. "What brings you through our little town?" "Just passing through on my way home. I have been down in San Antonio helping a friend move cattle. Thought I would stop here for supplies and rest before the final push north." Preston hesitated, then added, "Though I admit I am grateful for the stop now. Otherwise, I might never have met the bravest schoolteacher in Texas. A faint smile touched Zelda's lips, the first real warmth she had shown. Flattery, Mr. Calloway. I expected better from a cowboy with your reputation. My reputation, Preston Calloway, son of Marcus Calloway, known for being one of the finest horsemen in Texas, and according to my students' older brothers, quite the heartbreaker. Her tone was teasing now, and Preston felt heat creep up his neck. I assure you, madam, those rumors are greatly exaggerated. I am sure they are. Zelda picked up her broom from where she had dropped it. Well, Mr. Calloway, I should return to my schoolwork. I have lessons to prepare for Monday, and this excitement has already cost me an hour. Preston did not want her to go. He could not explain why, but something about this woman fascinated him. Her courage, certainly, but also the intelligence in her eyes and the way she had handled a dangerous situation with more grace than he had managed. He found himself wanting to know everything about her. "May I buy you dinner?" The words came out before he could stop them. "As a thank you for saving my life." Zelda raised an eyebrow. "I thought you were just passing through." "I am, but a man has to eat, and it seems only right to share a meal with someone who just talked down 3 armed men on my behalf." She considered this for a long moment, and Preston held his breath, waiting for her answer. Finally, she nodded. "The boarding house serves dinner at 6. The food is decent, and Mrs. Patterson keeps a respectable establishment. You may join me there if you are sincere in your offer." "I am very sincere," Preston assured her. "Then I will see you at 6, Mr. Calloway. Do try to avoid any more gunfights between now and then." With that, Zelda turned and walked back to the schoolhouse, her posture straight and proud. Preston watched her go, a smile playing on his lips. He collected Thunder and led him to the stable, paying the hostler to give the stallion extra oats and a good rub-down. The rest of the afternoon, Preston found himself anticipating dinner with an eagerness that surprised him. He cleaned up at the pump behind the stable, changed into his spare shirt, and even tried to tame his unruly brown hair, though it refused to cooperate. At precisely 6 o'clock, Preston arrived at the boarding house, a 2-story wooden building with a wraparound porch and cheerful yellow curtains in the windows. Mrs. Patterson, a plump woman with kind eyes, greeted him at the door. "You must be Mr. Calloway," she said, ushering him inside. "Miss Jennings told me to expect you. She is waiting in the dining room." The boarding house was cozy and well-maintained, with flowered wallpaper and polished wooden floors. Preston followed Mrs. Patterson to a small dining room where several tables were set for dinner. Zelda sat at a table by the window, and she had changed from her dusty blue dress into a green one that brought out the warmth in her eyes. Her dark hair was still pinned up, but a few tendrils had escaped to frame her face. Preston's breath caught. She was stunning. "Mr. Calloway," Zelda greeted him as he approached, "you are very punctual." "My mother raised me to respect other people's time," Preston said, taking the seat across from her. "You look lovely, Miss Jennings." "Thank you." She seemed pleased by the compliment but not flustered by it. Preston appreciated that. He had met too many women who simpered and giggled at every word, but Zelda had a self-possession that he found refreshing. Mrs. Patterson brought them plates of roast chicken, potatoes, and green beans, along with fresh bread and butter. The food was good, simple and hearty, and Preston realized he was hungrier than he had thought. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Zelda spoke. "So tell me, Mr. Calloway, what is it like growing up on a horse ranch?" Preston leaned back in his chair, considering the question. "It is hard work, but I cannot imagine doing anything else. There is something special about working with horses, earning their trust, watching them grow from foals into strong, capable animals." My father taught me that horses are not just property. They are partners, friends even. You treat them right, and they will give you everything they have. That is a beautiful philosophy, Zelda said softly. Not everyone sees animals that way. No, they do not. Which is why I could not let those men take Thunder. He is not just a horse to me. He is family. Preston paused, then asked, "What about you? How did you become a school teacher in Loveland?" Zelda's expression grew more serious. "I came here 3 years ago from Austin. My parents passed away when I was young, and I was raised by my aunt, who believed strongly in education for women. She paid for me to attend a teaching college, and when I graduated, I wanted to go somewhere I could make a real difference. Loveland needed a teacher, and I needed a fresh start." "You left Austin for a small town in the middle of nowhere?" Preston asked, genuinely curious. "Austin felt suffocating," Zelda admitted. "Too many rules, too many expectations about how a young woman should behave. Here I have freedom. I run my own classroom, make my own decisions. The people of Loveland respect me for my work, not for whether I fit into some narrow definition of propriety." She met his gaze directly. "Does that shock you?" "Not at all," Preston said honestly. "I admire it. Most people are afraid to chase what they really want." They talked through the rest of dinner, and Preston found himself captivated by Zelda's stories about teaching in a frontier town. She spoke passionately about her students, about the challenges of educating children whose families needed them to work on farms and ranches, about the joy of watching a child finally understand a difficult concept. In turn, Preston told her about life on the ranch, about training horses and helping his father build their reputation, about his dreams of one day expanding their operation. When Mrs. Patterson brought out apple pie for dessert, Preston realized he had been talking with Zelda for nearly 2 hours. It felt like minutes. He could not remember the last time he had enjoyed someone's company so thoroughly. "I should let you get back to your work," Preston said reluctantly as they finished their pie. "I am sure you have lesson plans to complete." "Actually," Zelda said slowly, "I was planning to do some stargazing tonight. There is a meteor shower predicted, and I like to watch the stars when the weather is clear. Would you care to join me?" Preston's heart leaped. "I would love to." They left the boarding house together, walking through the quiet streets of Loveland as dusk settled over the town. The air had cooled slightly, bringing relief from the day's heat. Zelda led him to a small hill on the edge of town, where the grass grew thick and the view of the sky was unobstructed. "This is my thinking spot," Zelda explained as they climbed. "When the school day gets overwhelming or I need to clear my head, I come here. At night, you can see every star in the sky." They reached the top of the hill, and Preston had to admit the view was spectacular. The sun had set completely, leaving the sky painted in shades of deep blue and purple, with stars beginning to emerge like diamonds scattered across velvet. In the distance, the lights of Loveland twinkled softly. Zelda sat down in the grass, arranging her skirts around her. Preston settled beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. They sat in silence for a while, watching as more stars appeared overhead. True to Zelda's prediction, streaks of light began to shoot across the sky as meteors burned through the atmosphere. "Beautiful," Preston murmured. "Yes," Zelda agreed. "I never tire of watching the stars. They make everything else seem smaller, more manageable. When I look at the vastness of the universe, my problems do not seem quite so overwhelming." Preston turned to look at her. In the starlight, her profile was ethereal, her face tilted up toward the heavens with an expression of pure wonder. Something shifted in his chest, a feeling he could not quite name, but that made his breath catch. "Tell me about your problems," he said softly. Zelda glanced at him, surprised. "My problems are not very interesting. I would like to hear them anyway. She was quiet for a moment, then sighed. The school board is threatening to close my classroom. They say Loveland does not need a permanent teacher, that families can educate their children at home. But most of these families are struggling just to survive. They do not have time to teach their children to read and write and do mathematics. If the school closes, these children will grow up without education, without opportunities. Her voice grew passionate. I am fighting to keep the school open, but the board members are all men who do not see the value in educating everyone, especially girls. That is ridiculous, Preston said, anger rising on her behalf. Education is the foundation of everything. Without it, how can anyone improve their circumstances? Exactly, Zelda said, relief evident in her voice. But try convincing the board of that. They only care about the cost of maintaining the building and paying my salary. How much do they need? Zelda named a figure that made Preston wince. It was not an enormous amount, but for a small town like Loveland, it was significant. I have been trying to raise funds, but it is slow going. I have until the end of September to prove the school is worth keeping open. Preston made a decision then, impulsive perhaps, but feeling absolutely right. I will help you. Zelda turned to face him fully, her eyes wide. What? No, Mr. Calloway, I could not ask that of you. You are just passing through. You did not ask. I am offering. Preston shifted to face her properly. Miss Jennings, you saved my life today. More than that, you have dedicated yourself to helping this community in a way that most people never would. The least I can do is help you in return. But you said you were going home to your ranch. I was, but my father is not expecting me for another week. I can send word that I have been delayed. The more Preston thought about it, the more certain he became. I am good with my hands. I can help repair the school building, talk to the board members, maybe even organize some fundraising events. My family name carries weight in this area. That might help. Zelda stared at him, and in the starlight he saw tears glimmer in her eyes. Why would you do this for me? You barely know me. I know enough, Preston said simply. I know you are brave and passionate and fighting for something that matters. That is the kind of person worth helping. A meteor streaked across the sky above them, bright and brief and beautiful. Zelda watched it, then looked back at Preston. If you truly mean this, then I accept your help, but only if you let me repay you somehow. Your company is payment enough, Preston said, and he meant it. The thought of spending more time with Zelda, of getting to know her better, was more appealing than anything else he could imagine. They sat on the hill for another hour, talking and watching the meteor shower. Preston learned that Zelda loved poetry, especially Walt Whitman, and that she played the piano, though Loveland had no piano for her to practice on. Zelda learned that Preston had a younger sister who was studying to become a doctor, which was rare for a woman, but his parents supported her dreams, and that his favorite time of day was dawn when the horses were calm and the world felt full of possibility. When they finally walked back to town, Preston felt like he had known Zelda for years rather than hours. There was an ease between them, a natural compatibility that he had never experienced with anyone else. At the boarding house door, Zelda turned to face him. Thank you for dinner, Mr. Calloway, and for offering to help with the school. I'm not sure I deserve such kindness from a stranger. You deserve far more than you realize, Miss Jennings, Preston said. And I hope we can move past being strangers. Please call me Preston. A smile curved her lips, genuine and warm. Only if you call me Zelda. Zelda, Preston repeated, liking the way her name felt on his tongue. I will see you tomorrow then. We can start planning how to save your school. Good night, Preston. Good night, Zelda. Preston walked to the stable where he had arranged to sleep in the loft, his mind full of the evening's events. He had come to Loveland expecting nothing more than a brief rest stop, but he had found something infinitely more valuable. He had found Zelda, brilliant and brave Zelda, who challenged him and intrigued him and made him want to be better than he was. As he settled into the hay, Preston looked through the loft window at the stars still visible above. Somewhere out there, Zelda was looking at the same sky, maybe thinking about him the way he was thinking about her. The thought made him smile as he drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Preston woke early and went straight to the schoolhouse. Zelda was already there, sweeping the front steps. She wore a simple brown dress with her hair in a braid, and she looked surprised to see him. "You are up early," she said. "Ranchers keep early hours," Preston replied. "I wanted to see the school properly, assess what needs to be done." Zelda's face brightened. "Come inside. I will show you around." The schoolhouse was a single large room with wooden benches serving as desks, a blackboard at the front, and shelves lined with books. It was simple but clean, and Preston could see evidence of Zelda's care everywhere. Children's drawings hung on the walls, the floor was swept, and someone had placed wildflowers in a jar on the teacher's desk. "How many students do you have?" Preston asked. "It varies depending on the season. During harvest time, I might only have 10 or 12 because the older children are needed on the farms. In winter, I sometimes have as many as 25. Zelda ran her hand along one of the benches fondly. "They are good children, Preston. They want to learn. They deserve the chance to have a better future than their parents." Preston examined the building carefully, noting places where the roof leaked, windows that needed repair, and floorboards that had come loose. "This is all fixable," he said. "I can get supplies from the general store and have the major repairs done in a few days." "You do not have to do all this yourself," Zelda protested. "I know, but I want to." Preston turned to face her. "Besides, I am going to recruit some help. If this school serves the community, then the community should help maintain it. We just need to remind people what they stand to lose." Over the next few days, Preston threw himself into the work with an energy that surprised even him. He purchased lumber and nails from the general store, explaining to the owner what he was doing and why. Word spread quickly through Loveland, and soon other men were stopping by the school to offer assistance. Preston organized the volunteers efficiently, assigning tasks based on skill level. Some men worked on the roof, replacing damaged shingles and sealing leaks. Others repaired the windows and reinforced the foundation. Preston himself took on the most challenging work, replacing rotten floorboards and fixing the door that had been hanging crooked on its hinges. Zelda was there every day, helping where she could and bringing water and food for the workers. Preston found himself watching her, admiring the way she encouraged the men, thanked them sincerely for their time, and never let anyone feel like their contribution was too small. She had a gift for making people want to help her, not through manipulation but through genuine appreciation and respect. In the evenings, after the other workers had gone home, Preston and Zelda would sit on the schoolhouse steps and talk. They discussed everything from politics to literature to their dreams for the future. Preston learned that Zelda wanted to start a library in Loveland, a place where anyone could access books and knowledge. Zelda learned that Preston hoped to eventually breed horses that were both strong enough for ranch work and fast enough for racing, creating a line that would be sought after across Texas. "You have big dreams," Zelda observed one evening as the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and red. "So do you," Preston countered. "A library in a frontier town. That is ambitious." "Is it wrong to want more for this place?" Zelda asked. "Loveland could be more than just another dusty stop on the way to somewhere else. It could be a real community, a place where people want to stay and build lives." "It is not wrong at all," Preston said softly. "It is admirable. You see potential where others see limitation. That is a rare gift." Zelda looked at him, and something passed between them, a spark of connection that made Preston's heart race. He had been falling for her slowly over the past days, but in that moment, he realized the depth of his feelings. This was not just attraction or admiration. This was something deeper, something that terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. Before he could say anything, Zelda stood abruptly. "It is getting late. I should head back to the boarding house." Preston rose as well, sensing her sudden nervousness. "Let me walk you." They walked in silence through the darkening streets. When they reached the boarding house, Zelda turned to him with a troubled expression. "Preston, I need to be honest with you about something." His stomach tightened with worry. "What is it?" "I am enjoying your company far more than I should," Zelda said, her words tumbling out quickly. "You are kind and hardworking, and you make me laugh, and I find myself looking forward to seeing you every day. But you are leaving soon, and I will still be here. I cannot let myself care too much for someone who is just passing through my life." Preston took her hands gently, his thumbs stroking over her knuckles. "What if I did not leave?" Zelda's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I have been thinking about this a lot over the past few days. I have been thinking about you, about Loveland, about what I want my life to look like." Preston took a deep breath. "My father does not need me at the ranch right now. My younger brother is more than capable of handling things. But you need help here, and more than that, I want to be here. I want to help you save the school, help you build your library, help you make Loveland into the community you envision." "Preston, you cannot upend your entire life for me," Zelda protested, though hope shone in her eyes. "I am not doing it just for you," Preston said honestly. "I am doing it for me too. I have been searching for something, Zelda, though I did not realize it until I met you. A purpose beyond just continuing what my father started. A chance to build something of my own. And maybe," he paused, gathering his courage, "maybe a chance at something more with you." Tears spilled down Zelda's cheeks. "You really mean this? Every word?" Preston reached up to wipe away her tears with his thumbs, cradling her face gently. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a few days, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. You are remarkable, Zelda Jennings. You are brave and passionate, and you make me want to be better than I am. I do not want to leave you. I do not want this to end." Zelda let out a laugh that was half sob. "I was so afraid you would ride away and I would never see you again." "I am not going anywhere," Preston promised. Then, before he could lose his nerve, he leaned down and kissed her. The kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise and possibility. Zelda's hands came up to rest on his chest, and Preston pulled her closer, deepening the kiss slightly. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "I have never felt this way about anyone," Zelda whispered against his lips. "Neither have I," Preston admitted. "It is terrifying and wonderful all at once." They stood there for a long moment, foreheads pressed together, just breathing each other in. Finally, Zelda pulled back with a shaky smile. "I really do need to go inside now, or Mrs. Patterson will have questions." "Let her have questions," Preston said, grinning. "I do not care who knows how I feel about you." Zelda laughed, the sound bright and joyful. "Good night, Preston." "Good night, my stargazer." Preston walked back to the stable feeling like he was floating. Everything had changed in an instant, and yet it felt like the most natural thing in the world. He was staying in Loveland. He was going to help Zelda. And somehow, impossibly, this incredible woman cared for him too. The next morning, Preston sent a telegram to his father explaining that he had been delayed and would be staying in Loveland for the foreseeable future. His father's response came that afternoon, brief but supportive. "Follow your heart, son. The ranch will be here when you are ready." With that settled, Preston threw himself into organizing a fundraising event for the school. He convinced the owner of the saloon to donate the use of his largest room for a town meeting, then spent days going door to door, talking to families about the importance of keeping the school open. To his surprise and delight, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Parents who had been silent before now spoke up about how much their children had learned under Zelda's teaching. Farmers shared stories of their kids reading almanacs to help playing crops, of daughters who dreamed of becoming teachers themselves, of sons who could do mathematics better than their parents. The school had made a real difference in Loveland, and people were finally ready to fight for it. The town meeting was packed. Preston had expected maybe 30 or 40 people, but nearly 100 crammed into the saloon, standing room only. The school board members sat at the front, looking uncomfortable with the turnout. Preston stood up to speak, his heart pounding. Public speaking had never been his strength, but for Zelda, he would do anything. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I know many of you are wondering why a stranger is calling a meeting about your school. The truth is, I came to Loveland by accident, just passing through. But I met Miss Jennings, and I saw the work she is doing, and I realized this town has something special. You have a teacher who cares deeply about every single one of her students. You have a school that is changing lives, and you are about to throw it all away over a few $100s." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Preston continued, "I have spent the past week talking to your families, hearing stories about how Miss Jennings has helped your children. I have heard about Bobby Thompson, who could not read a word when she started teaching him, and who is now reading every book he can get his hands on. I have heard about Sarah Mitchell, who wants to be a teacher herself, because Miss Jennings showed her that women can be educated and independent. I have heard about the Hernandez twins, who are learning English from Miss Jennings even though their parents speak only Spanish at home, opening up opportunities they never would have had otherwise." He paused, looking around the room at the faces watching him intently. "These children are your future. They will inherit your farms and ranches. They will run businesses, serve in government, shape the direction of this community. Do you want them to do it without education? Do you want them to struggle the way some of you have struggled, unable to read contracts or keep proper accounts or write letters to loved ones? No." Someone shouted from the back, and others echoed the sentiment. Preston turned to the school board. "Gentlemen, I know you have concerns about the cost, so I have a proposal. Tonight, the people of Loveland are going to commit to supporting this school. We are going to raise the money needed to keep it open, not just for this year but for years to come. And I am personally pledging $200 to start the fund." Gasps filled the room. $200 was a significant sum, representing months of work for most people. Preston had not told Zelda he was planning this, and he could see her shocked face in the front row. "That is very generous, Mr. Calloway," the head of the school board said slowly. "But even with your contribution, we would still need at least $300 more to meet our budget for the year." "Then let us raise it right now," Preston declared. "I propose that everyone here pledge what they can afford. It does not have to be much. A few dollars from each family adds up. And for those who cannot afford to give money, we can accept other contributions. Supplies for the school, labor for maintenance, whatever you can offer. This school belongs to all of you. It is time to prove how much you value it." What followed was one of the most moving experiences of Preston's life. One by one, families stood up to pledge their support. Some could only afford $1 or $2, others pledged $5 or $10. The saloon owner offered to provide free lunches for students whose families could not afford food. The doctor pledged free medical care for Zelda. A rancher promised to donate wood for heating the school through winter. Within an hour, they had raised over $400 in cash and commitments, more than enough to cover the school's expenses for the year with money left over for books and supplies. The school board members conferred quietly, then the head stood up. "It is clear that this community values its school," he said. "In light of tonight's show of support, the board votes unanimously to keep the school open. Miss Jennings will continue as teacher with our full backing." The room erupted in cheers. Preston was immediately surrounded by people shaking his hand and clapping him on the back, but his eyes sought Zelda. She was crying openly, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Preston pushed through the crowd to reach her. "You did this," she said when he got close enough. "You made this happen." "We did this together," Preston corrected. "You built something worth saving. I just helped people see it." Zelda threw her arms around his neck, uncaring of the crowd watching. Preston held her tight, feeling her tears soak into his shirt. When she pulled back, her smile was radiant. "I do not know how to thank you." "Just keep doing what you are doing," Preston said. "Keep teaching, keep dreaming, keep making Loveland better. That is thanks enough." The celebration continued late into the night. Someone brought out a fiddle, and impromptu dancing broke out in the street. Preston and Zelda danced together, laughing and spinning under the stars. It felt like the whole town was celebrating not just the school's survival but the hope of a brighter future. Later, when the crowd had thinned and most families had gone home, Preston walked Zelda back to the boarding house. They took the long way, neither wanting the night to end. "Preston, what you said about pledging $200, Zelda began hesitantly. "That is a lot of money." "I cannot let you sacrifice so much for the school." "It is not a sacrifice," Preston said firmly. "It is an investment. In the school, yes, but also in Loveland. If I am going to make this place my home, I want it to be the best it can be." Zelda stopped walking and turned to face him. "You really are staying. I told you I was." "I know, but I thought maybe once the school was saved, you would realize you had done your good deed and move on." Her voice was small, vulnerable in a way Preston had not heard before. He took her hands, pulling her closer. "Zelda, I am not staying for the school. I mean, I care about the school, but that is not why I am here. I am staying because of you. Because in the few weeks I have known you, you have become the most important person in my life. Because when I think about my future now, I cannot imagine it without you in it." "Preston," Zelda breathed, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I love you," Preston said, the words feeling both terrifying and freeing. "I know it is fast, maybe too fast, but I cannot keep it inside anymore. I love your courage and your passion, and the way you care so deeply about everything you do. I love how you face down armed men with just a broom and how you cry when your students succeed. I love the way you look at the stars and the way you laugh when something truly delights you. I love you, Zelda Jennings, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." Zelda was fully crying now, but she was also smiling, the two emotions blending together beautifully. "I love you too," she said. "I tried not to. I tried to protect my heart because I was so afraid of losing you. But you are impossible not to love, Preston Calloway. You are kind and selfless, and you see the best in everyone, including me. I love you so much it scares me." Preston cupped her face in his hands, thumbs wiping away her tears. "Do not be scared. I am right here, and I am not going anywhere." He kissed her then, pouring all his love and devotion into it. Zelda kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms wrapping around his neck as she pressed closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless and grinning like fools. "Does this mean we are courting?" Zelda asked, a teasing note in her voice despite her tears. "If you will have me," Preston said. "Though I should warn you, I intend to court you with every intention of marrying you someday if you will say yes." "Someday?" Zelda raised an eyebrow. "How very presumptuous of you." "Is it presumptuous if I am confident you feel the same way?" Zelda laughed, the sound full of joy. "No, I suppose it is not. And for the record, when you do ask me someday, I will say yes." They stood there in the moonlight, holding each other and whispering promises about their future. Preston had never imagined his life could change so completely in such a short time, but he would not trade it for anything. He had found his purpose, his home, and most importantly, he had found Zelda. The next few months passed in a blur of happiness. Preston officially moved to Loveland, renting a room at the boarding house until he could build his own place. He used his knowledge of horses to start a small training business, helping local ranchers with problem animals and teaching young people proper riding techniques. The business grew quickly, and soon Preston was making enough money to support himself comfortably. He and Zelda were inseparable. They spent their evenings together, sometimes going back to their hill to watch the stars, sometimes just sitting on the schoolhouse steps talking about their days. Preston helped Zelda with her lesson plans, and Zelda helped Preston with the business side of his training operation, teaching him better bookkeeping methods. The town watched their courtship with approval. Preston and Zelda made no secret of their feelings for each other, and Loveland's residents appreciated the love story unfolding in their midst. Mrs. Patterson took particular delight in chaperoning them, always making sure they had a table by the window at dinner, and conveniently forgetting to check if they were still sitting on the porch long after dark. In November, Preston took Zelda to meet his family. They rode north to the Calloway Ranch, a beautiful sprawling property with white fences and horses grazing in green pastures. Preston's parents, Marcus and Eleanor Calloway, welcomed Zelda with open arms. "So you are the woman who stole our son's heart," Marcus said, his eyes twinkling with amusement. He was an older version of Preston, tall and broad-shouldered with silver streaking his brown hair. "She is also the woman who saved his life," Preston interjected. "I wrote you about the attempted horse theft." "You did indeed," Eleanor said warmly. She was a petite woman with kind eyes and an air of quiet strength. "We are grateful to you for that, Miss Jennings, and for everything else Preston has told us about you." Zelda blushed but took the praise gracefully. Over the next few days, she charmed Preston's entire family. His younger brother, Marcus Jr., asked her endless questions about teaching. His sister, Rebecca, showed Zelda her medical texts and talked about her dreams of opening a practice in a city where women doctors were more accepted. His parents treated her like she already belonged to the family. On the last night of their visit, Preston took Zelda on a walk through the ranch at sunset. They stopped by the paddock where Thunder grazed contentedly with the other horses. "Your family is wonderful," Zelda said, leaning against the fence. "They have made me feel so welcome." "They love you already," Preston said. "Almost as much as I do." Zelda smiled at him. "This place is beautiful, Preston. Are you sure you do not regret leaving it?" "Not for a second." Preston turned to face her, taking her hands in his. "Zelda, I brought you here because I wanted you to understand where I come from, but also because I needed my family to meet the woman I intend to marry. I know we said someday, but I cannot wait anymore. I do not want to spend another day without being engaged to you." Zelda's eyes widened as Preston dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a simple gold band with a small diamond, elegant and understated just like Zelda herself. "Zelda Jennings, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life loving you, supporting your dreams and building a future together? Will you be my wife?" Tears streamed down Zelda's face as she nodded vigorously. Yes. Yes, Preston, of course I will marry you. Preston slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed through her tears. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply, sealing their engagement with all the love in his heart. They were married in March of 1879, in a ceremony at the Loveland schoolhouse, since it was the largest building in town and held special meaning for them both. The entire town turned out to celebrate, filling the schoolhouse and spilling out into the yard. Zelda wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself, with wildflowers in her hair. Preston wore his best suit, and he had never felt more nervous or more certain of anything in his life. Reverend Thompson performed the ceremony, speaking about love and commitment and partnership. When it came time for vows, Preston took Zelda's hands and spoke from his heart. Zelda, before I met you, I was just drifting through life, going through the motions without real purpose. You showed me what it means to be truly passionate about something, to fight for what matters. You have made me a better man, and I promise to spend every day of our marriage trying to be worthy of you. I promise to support your dreams, to stand by your side through whatever challenges we face, and to love you with everything I am for as long as I live. Zelda's vows were equally heartfelt. Preston, you came into my life when I least expected it and changed everything. You saw potential in me that I could not see in myself. You fought for my school, for my dreams, for this town, asking nothing in return. You have shown me what love really means, not just in words but in actions every single day. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support you the way you have supported me, and to love you fiercely and completely for the rest of my life. There was not a dry eye in the schoolhouse when they exchanged rings and sealed their marriage with a kiss. The celebration afterward lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and more food than Preston had ever seen in Loveland. His family had made the trip from the ranch, and they mingled easily with the townspeople, his father sharing horse stories with local ranchers while his mother helped Mrs. Patterson serve food. As the evening wore on, Preston and Zelda stole away to their hill, wanting a few moments alone. They sat in the grass, Zelda's head resting on Preston's shoulder, and looked up at the stars. I cannot believe we are married, Zelda said softly. Sometimes I still feel like I am dreaming. If you are, then I am having the same dream, Preston replied, kissing the top of her head. And I never want to wake up. Do you ever think about that first day, when those men tried to steal thunder and I came storming out with my broom? Preston chuckled. I think about it all the time. I thought you were either incredibly brave or completely insane. Maybe both. I was terrified, Zelda admitted. But I was also so angry. Angry that violence was disrupting my peaceful town. Angry that someone would steal from an innocent person. And then I saw you behind that wagon and something in my chest just tightened. I knew I had to do something. I am very glad you did. Preston pulled her closer. Though I think I fell in love with you that very first night when you took me stargazing. You looked so peaceful, so content watching the meteors. And when you talked about your problems seeming smaller under the vast sky, I realized you were the most remarkable person I had ever met. Everything after that was just me trying to find reasons to stay near you. You did not need reasons, Zelda said, tilting her face up to kiss him. I wanted you to stay from the beginning. I was just too afraid to hope you would. They stayed on the hill for hours, talking and kissing and making plans for their future. Preston had purchased land just outside Loveland where he was going to build them a house, large enough for the family they both wanted. Zelda was already planning where her library would go, deciding that the front room would have floor-to-ceiling bookshelves if Preston could build them. Of course I can build them, Preston assured her. Your library will be the finest room in the house. "Our house," Zelda corrected with a smile. "Everything is ours now." Preston had never been happier than he was in that moment, with his wife in his arms and their whole future stretching out before them like the starry sky above. He had come to Loveland by chance, but he was staying by choice, the best choice he had ever made. The years that followed were filled with hard work and deep contentment. Preston built their house exactly as they had planned, with a spacious front room that became Zelda's library. She filled it with books purchased from Austin and San Antonio, and soon it became a gathering place for the community. Children came to borrow books after school. Adults stopped by to read the newspapers Preston subscribed to. And on Sunday afternoons, Zelda held reading groups where they discussed literature and poetry. Preston's horse training business flourished. His reputation for patience and skill spread throughout the region, and soon ranchers from as far as Fort Worth were bringing him their most difficult horses. He never lost his gentle approach, always treating each animal with respect and care. Thunder remained his constant companion, now joined by several other horses Preston had purchased or bred. In the fall of 1880, Zelda discovered she was pregnant. Preston had never seen her so radiant, her hand constantly resting on her growing belly as she talked about their future child. They spent evenings discussing names and making plans, Preston building a cradle while Zelda sewed tiny clothes. Their son was born in May of 1881, a healthy baby with Preston's brown hair and Zelda's amber eyes. They named him Marcus, after Preston's father, and the proud grandfather made the trip to Loveland the week after the birth to meet his namesake. "He is perfect," Marcus Sr. said, cradling the baby with the ease of experience. "He has your determination, Preston. I can already tell. This boy is going to do great things." Parenthood suited Preston and Zelda. They took to it naturally, working together to care for Marcus while still maintaining their respective careers. Zelda returned to teaching after a few months, bringing Marcus to school with her since he was too young to be left alone. The students adored having a baby in the classroom, and Preston would sometimes stop by during the day to check on them both, always staying for a few minutes to play with his son. As Marcus grew from baby to toddler, Preston taught him about horses while Zelda taught him letters and numbers. The boy was bright and curious, asking endless questions about everything he saw. Preston saw pieces of both himself and Zelda in their son, and it filled him with pride and love. In 1883, Zelda gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Alina after Preston's mother. Alina was quieter than Marcus had been, content to observe the world with solemn eyes. She looked more like Zelda, with dark hair and delicate features, and from an early age she showed her mother's love of learning. Life in Loveland continued to improve. The town grew slowly but steadily, with new families moving in and businesses opening. The school remained the heart of the community, with Zelda at its center. Preston had been right all those years ago. Zelda was transforming Loveland into a real community, a place where people wanted to stay and build lives. In 1885, Preston and Zelda celebrated their 6th wedding anniversary with a picnic on their hill, the same place where they had first watched the stars together. Marcus and Alina played in the grass nearby while their parents reminisced about how they had met. "You ever miss the ranch?" Zelda asked, a question she had not posed in years. "No," Preston answered honestly. "I have everything I need right here. You, our children, our work. This is where I am meant to be." "Sometimes I still cannot believe how lucky I am," Zelda said softly, "that you rode into Loveland that day. That you stayed, that you chose me in this life." Preston pulled her close, kissing her temple. "I am the lucky one. You are still the brightest light I have ever seen, Zelda. Every single day you amaze me with your strength and wisdom and love. That is very poetic, Mr. Calloway. I learned from the best, Mrs. Calloway. They watched their children play as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Marcus was showing Alina how to catch grasshoppers, the 5-year-old boy patient with his 2-year-old sister. Preston's heart swelled with love for his family, for this life he and Zelda had built together. The years continued to pass, marked by small joys and occasional challenges. Droughts came and went, testing the ranchers and farmers of the region. The school board tried once more to close the school during a particularly difficult year, but the community rallied again, their commitment to education even stronger now than it had been in the beginning. Marcus Jr., Preston's brother, married and took over running the Calloway Ranch when their father decided to retire. Rebecca achieved her dream of becoming a doctor, opening a practice in Dallas, where she gained a reputation as one of the finest physicians in Texas, regardless of gender. Preston's parents moved to a smaller house in town near the ranch, content to spend their twilight years watching their grandchildren grow. Preston and Zelda's family grew as well. In 1887, they welcomed twin boys, which they named Thomas and James. The twins were a handful, full of energy and mischief, keeping their parents constantly on their toes. Marcus took his role as oldest sibling seriously, helping to watch over his younger brothers and sister. Alina remained the quiet one, always with her nose in a book, so much like her mother that it made Preston smile. The children grew up surrounded by love and learning. They attended their mother's school, rode horses with their father, and learned the value of community from both parents. Preston and Zelda made sure to instill in them the importance of education, hard work, and kindness. Family dinners were spent discussing everything from literature to politics to the proper way to train a young horse. In 1890, when Marcus was 9 years old, he asked his father about the day Preston had met his mother. "Tell me again about how you saved Mother from the bad men," Marcus requested as they groomed Thunder together. The stallion was older now, his muzzle flecked with gray but still strong and spirited. Preston smiled, correcting his son's version of events. "Actually, your mother saved me. I was the one hiding behind a wagon while 3 men shot at me. Your mother marched right into the middle of the gunfight with nothing but a broom and her courage. She talked those men down and probably saved my life." "Mother did that." Marcus's eyes widened with admiration. "She did. Your mother is the bravest person I have ever known. She stood up to armed thieves, fought to save her school against people who wanted to shut it down, and built a library from nothing. She has spent her whole life making Loveland a better place. Is that why you stayed? Because Mother was brave?" Preston considered the question carefully, wanting to give his son an honest answer. "I stayed because your mother showed me what really matters in life. Before I met her, I was just drifting along, doing what was expected of me but not really living with purpose. Your mother taught me to fight for things that matter, to put down roots, to be part of something bigger than myself. I stayed because I fell in love with her, yes, but also because I fell in love with the life we could build together." Marcus absorbed this thoughtfully. "I want to be like that when I grow up. I want to find something worth fighting for." "You will," Preston assured him, ruffling his son's hair. "And when you do, fight for it with everything you have. That is the most important lesson I can teach you." That evening, Preston recounted the conversation to Zelda as they sat on their front porch watching the sunset. Their house had become a warm, welcoming home filled with books and laughter and love. The library Zelda had dreamed of was now a reality, its shelves packed with volumes collected over the years. The walls were covered with children's artwork and family photographs, marking the passage of time. "He is going to be a good man," Zelda said, speaking of Marcus. "They all are." "We are raising them right, Preston." "We are raising them together," Preston corrected. "That is what makes the difference. They see us working as a team, respecting each other, supporting each other's dreams. They see what a real partnership looks like." Zelda leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not stopped in Loveland that day?" "Sometimes," Preston admitted. "I probably would have made it back to the ranch, worked alongside my brother for a few years, eventually married someone my parents introduced me to. It would have been a good life, I suppose, but it would not have been this life. It would not have been you, our children, this community we have built. And I cannot imagine any existence that could compare to what we have." "I think about it too," Zelda confessed. "If you had not stopped that day, if those men had not tried to steal thunder, if I had not been brave enough to walk into that gunfight, the school probably would have closed. I would have had to leave Loveland, find work somewhere else. I would have survived, but I would not have thrived. You gave me that, Preston. You gave me the chance to build the life I dreamed of." "We gave each other that chance," Preston said, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips. "That is what makes it so special." They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the sky turned from orange to purple to deep blue, and the first stars began to appear. Even after all these years, they still made time to watch the stars together, to remember that first night on the hill when everything had changed. Inside the house, they could hear the children getting ready for bed. Alina was reading to the twins while Marcus helped them into their night clothes. In a few minutes, Preston and Zelda would go inside to tuck everyone in, to kiss foreheads and whisper goodnights and reassure any child who had bad dreams. But for now, they savored these quiet moments together, just the two of them under the vast Texas sky. The years continued to unfold, bringing new challenges and triumphs. Loveland continued to grow, eventually becoming a proper town with a post office, a bank, and even a small hotel for travelers. The school expanded, requiring an additional teacher to help Zelda manage the increasing number of students. Zelda hired a young woman fresh from teaching college, mentoring her the way she wished someone had mentored her when she first arrived in Loveland. Preston's horse training business became one of the most respected in the region. He developed a breeding program that combined his father's best stock with horses he had carefully selected from other ranches, creating a line known for intelligence, strength, and temperament. Ranchers and farmers came from across Texas to purchase Callaway horses, knowing they were getting animals that would serve them faithfully for years. In 1895, Marcus turned 14 and began helping Preston full-time with the horses. The boy had inherited his father's natural way with animals, able to calm even the most skittish horse with patience and gentle words. Preston watched his son work with pride, seeing himself at that age, but also seeing something unique in Marcus, a creativity and innovation that would take the family business in new directions. Alina, at 12, had already read every book in her mother's library and was constantly begging for more. She had a particular interest in medicine, inspired by her Aunt Rebecca's success as a doctor. Zelda encouraged this passion, ordering medical texts and helping Alina understand the complex concepts. Preston knew his daughter would probably leave Loveland someday to pursue her education, and while the thought saddened him, he would support her dreams just as his parents had supported Rebecca's. The twins, Thomas and James, were 11 and developing distinct personalities, despite being identical in appearance. Thomas was the quieter of the two, thoughtful and methodical, showing an aptitude for mathematics and engineering. James was more outgoing, charming, and clever, with a gift for persuasion that reminded Preston of Zelda. Both boys were close, the kind of twins who seemed to communicate without words, and Preston often found them working together on some scheme or project. In 1896, Loveland celebrated its 25th anniversary as an incorporated town. A week-long celebration was planned, with rodeos, dances, and a formal dinner honoring the town's founders and most prominent citizens. Preston and Zelda were asked to speak at the dinner, recognition of the impact they had made on the community over the past 18 years. Preston was nervous about the speech, but Zelda helped him prepare, coaching him on what to say and how to say it. On the night of the dinner, the town hall was packed with people who had come to celebrate Loveland's success. Preston and Zelda stood together at the podium, and Preston began to speak. When I first rode into Loveland in the summer of 1878, I was just a cowboy passing through. I had no intention of staying, no connection to this place. But then I met someone who changed everything. He looked at Zelda, who smiled encouragingly. My wife taught me that a town is more than just buildings and streets. It is the people who live there, the dreams they chase, the community they build together. Loveland is special not because of its location or its resources, but because of all of you. You fought to keep the school open. You welcomed a stranger and gave him a home. You built businesses and raised families and created something worth celebrating. Zelda took over, her voice clear and strong. Preston and I have been fortunate to be part of Loveland's growth. We have watched this town transform from a dusty stop on the road to a thriving community. We have seen children grow into adults, families put down roots, dreams become reality, and we are proud to call this place home. Here is to the next 25 years and beyond. Here is to Loveland and to all of you who make it what it is. The room erupted in applause. Preston and Zelda returned to their seats, surrounded by their children and friends. The rest of the evening was filled with music and dancing and storytelling. Preston danced with Zelda, with Alina, with Mrs. Patterson, who had aged but still maintained the boarding house with the same dedication. He shook hands with men he had known for nearly 2 decades, men who had helped repair the school, who had supported his business, who had become true friends. As the night wound down, Preston found himself back on the hill with Zelda, stealing away from the festivities for a few quiet moments. The stars were bright overhead, and a cool breeze brought relief from the day's heat. "Can you believe it has been 18 years?" Zelda asked, nestled against Preston's side. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Sometimes it feels like yesterday." Preston tightened his arm around her. "But every day in between has been a gift. Every single one. Even the hard days," Zelda teased. "Even when the twins covered themselves in mud and tracked it through the whole house. Or when Marcus fell off Thunder and broke his arm. Or when Alina had the flu so badly we thought we might lose her. Even those days," Preston confirmed. "Because we faced them together. Because they are all part of our story, the good and the bad woven together into this life we have built. I would not change a single moment." Zelda was quiet for a long time, then she said, "Preston, there is something I need to tell you." The seriousness of her tone made Preston's heart skip a beat. "What is it?" "I am pregnant again." Preston stared at her in shock. "You are, but you are 41. "I thought we were done having children." "So did I," Zelda said, laughing softly. "Apparently fate had other plans. Are you upset?" "Upset?" Preston pulled her into a tight embrace, his heart full to bursting. "Zelda, how could I be upset? Another child, another blessing. I am thrilled. Truly. Because we are not young parents anymore. This baby will be 17 years younger than Marcus." "Age is just a number," Preston declared. "We have more wisdom now, more patience. And our other children can help. It will be wonderful, Zelda. Everything we do together is wonderful." Tears of relief and joy sparkled on Zelda's cheeks. "I hoped you would say that. I was nervous to tell you, worried you might think we were too old." "We are never too old for love," Preston said, kissing her softly. "And this child will be so loved. By us, by our other children, by this whole community. What a lucky baby to come into a world surrounded by so much love." They sat on the hill until late, making plans and dreaming about the future once again. Preston marveled at how his life continued to surprise and delight him. Just when he thought he knew what his future held, something new and wonderful happened to remind him that life was full of unexpected gifts. Their youngest child, a daughter they named Clara, was born in the spring of 1897. She arrived healthy and strong, with dark hair like her mother and a lusty cry that announced her presence to the world. Marcus, now 16, was old enough to appreciate the miracle of a new life. Eleanor, 14, helped care for her baby sister with tenderness and devotion. The twins, at 12, were fascinated by how tiny Clara was, constantly asking to hold her and making her laugh with their antics. Preston fell in love with his youngest daughter instantly. Watching her grow brought back memories of Marcus as a baby, of Eleanor's quiet observation, of the twins' boundless energy. But Clara was unique, her own person from the start. She was fearless and curious, reaching for everything, examining the world with wide, wondering eyes. As Clara grew from baby to toddler, Preston found himself more aware of time passing. His hair had more gray now, and lines creased his face around his eyes and mouth. Zelda, too, showed the marks of age, though to Preston, she was as beautiful as the day he had first seen her confronting armed men with nothing but a broom and courage. They marked their 20th wedding anniversary in 1899 with a quiet celebration, just the two of them on their hill under the stars. The children were old enough now to stay home alone for an evening, though Preston suspected Marcus was keeping a watchful eye on his younger siblings. 20 years, Zelda mused, lying in the grass with her head on Preston's chest. 2 whole decades of marriage. Do you remember what you said in your vows? That I had made you a better man? I remember every word I said that day, Preston confirmed. Well, I want you to know that you did the same for me. Before you, I was fighting alone, convinced that I had to be strong and independent and never rely on anyone. You showed me that real strength comes from partnership, from letting someone stand beside you. You have made me a better person, Preston. Thank you for that. Preston felt emotion well up in his throat. Even after 20 years, Zelda could still move him to tears with her words. We made each other better. That is what love does, I think. It smooths out our rough edges, brings out our best qualities, makes us want to be more than we are. They lay there together, watching meteors streak across the sky just like they had on their first night. The years had changed them, marked them, shaped them into the people they were now. But the love between them remained constant, a bright, steady flame that had only grown stronger with time. In 1902, Marcus married a young woman named Anna who worked as a seamstress in town. The wedding was held at the schoolhouse, just like Preston and Zelda's had been, continuing the tradition. Preston walked his son down the aisle, his heart full of pride and bittersweet joy. Marcus was a man now, ready to start his own family, to build his own life. Preston knew he had done his job as a father, raising a son who was kind, hardworking, and capable of deep love. Eleanor left for medical school in Dallas the following year, following in her Aunt Rebecca's footsteps. Preston and Zelda made the journey to see her off, helping her settle into a boarding house near the university. Saying goodbye was harder than Preston had anticipated. Eleanor had been his quiet shadow, always reading nearby while he worked with the horses, asking thoughtful questions about everything. But he was immensely proud of her ambition and determination. The twins graduated from Zelda's school in 1904 and decided to go into business together, opening a general store in Loveland. Thomas handled the accounts and inventory while James managed customer relations. They were a perfect team, complementing each other's strengths. Preston helped them secure a loan for the initial investment, and within a year, their store was thriving. Clara, at 7 years old, was the baby of the family and thoroughly spoiled by everyone. She had her mother's fierce intelligence and her father's gentle nature. Preston spent hours with her, teaching her to ride, showing her the constellations, reading her favorite stories. She was his little stargazer, just like her mother had been. In 1906, Marcus and Anna welcomed Preston and Zelda's first grandchild, a boy they named Preston Marcus Calloway. Becoming a grandfather moved Preston in ways he had not expected. Holding the tiny baby, seeing his name carried forward to another generation, filled him with overwhelming gratitude for the life he had lived. "We are grandparents," Zelda said wonderingly, cradling little Preston in her arms. "How did we get old enough to be grandparents?" "By living every day to its fullest," Preston replied, wrapping his arms around both Zelda and the baby. "By building a life worth living, raising children worth being proud of. This is our legacy, Zelda. Not just this baby, but everything we have created. Our family, the school, the library, the business. We have left Loveland better than we found it." "You left me better than you found me," Zelda said softly. "That is your greatest legacy, Preston Calloway. You loved me when I was prickly and proud and afraid to let anyone close. You saw past all my defenses and loved me anyway. You gave me a family, a home, a life beyond my wildest dreams." Preston kissed the top of her head, careful not to disturb the baby sleeping in her arms. "And you gave me purpose, direction, a reason to stay in one place and put down roots. You gave me children who amaze me every day, a community that feels like family, and 27 years of the deepest happiness I have ever known. We gave each other everything that matters." The years continued their steady march forward. Eleanor completed medical school and opened a practice in Loveland, returning home to serve the community that had raised her. She became the town's first female doctor, facing some initial skepticism that she quickly overcame with her skill and dedication. Preston could not have been prouder. The twins expanded their general store, eventually opening a second location in a nearby town. Marcus took over Preston's horse training business when Preston's arthritis made the physical work too difficult. Clara grew into a bright, confident young woman who expressed interest in becoming a teacher like her mother. Preston watched his children succeed and thrive, knowing that he and Zelda had given them the tools they needed to build good lives. In 1915, Preston and Zelda celebrated their 36th wedding anniversary. Preston was now 63 years old, his hair completely gray, his face deeply lined. Zelda was 60, her dark hair streaked with silver, but her amber eyes still sparkled with the same intelligence and fire he had first noticed all those years ago. They went to their hill as they did every anniversary, moving more slowly now but still making the climb. Preston spread out a blanket and they sat together, looking at the stars that had witnessed the beginning of their love story. "You remember what you said that first night?" Preston asked. "About how the stars made your problems seem smaller and more manageable." "I remember," Zelda said. "I meant it then and I still mean it now. Although," she added with a smile, "my problems are different now. Less about saving schools and more about convincing Clara that she does not need to elope with that young cowboy who has been courting her." Preston laughed. "He is a good man." Reminds me a bit of myself at that age." "That is exactly what worries me," Zelda teased. "I remember what you were like at that age. Impulsive, romantic, willing to change your entire life for a woman you had just met." "And how did that work out?" Preston challenged. "Better than I could have imagined," Zelda admitted, leaning into his side. "You were right to be impulsive. You were right to follow your heart, and if Clara wants to do the same, I suppose I should support her." "She learned from the best," Preston said. "She watched us build a life together, and now she wants that for herself. That is a beautiful thing." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands and watching the stars. Preston felt the weight of his years, but also the satisfaction of a life well lived. He had done what he set out to do all those years ago. He had loved Zelda with everything he had, supported her dreams, built a family and a life that mattered. "Preston," Zelda said quietly, "if you could go back and change anything, would you?" "Not a single thing," Preston replied without hesitation. "Every moment, good and bad, led us here. To this life, this family, this love. I would live it all exactly the same way. Even the part where those men tried to steal thunder, especially that part," Preston said, pulling her closer. "Because that is how I found you, stargazing alone on a hill, the brightest light I have ever seen. You still are, Zelda. After all these years, you are still the brightest light in my life." Tears slipped down Zelda's cheeks. "And you are mine. You always have been." They kissed under the stars, a kiss full of love and history and promise. 36 years of marriage, of partnership, of choosing each other every single day. Preston knew that whatever time they had left, they would face it together, just as they had faced everything else. In the years that followed, Preston and Zelda settled into a comfortable rhythm. They watched their grandchildren grow, eventually welcoming more as Marcus and Anna had 2 more children, and Alina married a fellow doctor and started her own family. The twins both married women from neighboring towns, and Clara did indeed marry her young cowboy in a ceremony that reminded everyone of Preston and Zelda's wedding. Preston spent his days in a rocking chair on the front porch of their home, watching the world go by and greeting neighbors who stopped to chat. Zelda continued teaching part-time, unable to fully retire from the work she loved. Their house remained a gathering place for family and friends, always full of life and laughter and love. In the spring of 1920, Preston fell ill. What started as a simple cold developed into pneumonia, and despite Alina's best efforts, his condition worsened. He spent 2 weeks in bed, growing weaker each day. Zelda never left his side, holding his hand and reading to him from his favorite books. On a clear night when the stars were particularly bright, Preston woke from a restless sleep to find Zelda sitting beside his bed, tears streaming down her face. "Do not cry, my love," he whispered, his voice weak. "How can I not cry?" Zelda replied, gripping his hand tightly. "I am not ready to lose you, Preston. I will never be ready." "You are not losing me," Preston said with effort. "I will always be with you. In the stars you love to watch, in the school you fought so hard to save, in our children and grandchildren. I will be in every sunset and every memory of the life we built together." "It is not enough," Zelda sobbed. "I want you here beside me where you have always been." "I know. I want that too." Preston brought her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "But Zelda, what a life we have had. 41 years of marriage, 5 beautiful children, more grandchildren than I can count. We built something that will last long after we are gone. We loved each other well. That is all anyone can hope for." "I love you so much," Zelda whispered. "I have loved you since the moment you dove in front of those bullets to protect me. I have loved you every single day since. And I have loved you since I saw you stargazing on that hill," Preston said, his eyes growing heavy. "You were the brightest light then, and you still are." Promise me something, Zelda. Anything. Promise me you will keep shining. Keep teaching, keep building, keep making Loveland better. Do not let grief dim your light. The world needs it too much." "I promise," Zelda said through her tears. "But only if you promise to wait for me. When my time comes, you better be there to meet me." Preston managed a weak smile. "I will be waiting under the stars. We will watch them together again, just like that first night." His children gathered around his bed, all of them crying as they said their goodbyes. Marcus held his father's hand and promised to take care of the family. Alina kissed his forehead and thanked him for always believing in her dreams. The twins stood on either side of the bed, their usual joviality replaced with grief. Clara, now 23 and pregnant with her first child, sobbed as she told him she was naming her baby after him. As the first light of dawn broke through the window, Preston took his last breath with Zelda's hand in his and his children surrounding him. He died peacefully, ready to rest after a long life fully lived. The entire town of Loveland turned out for Preston's funeral. The service was held at the school he had helped save, and people stood 10 deep outside the building, unable to fit inside. One by one, they shared stories about how Preston had impacted their lives. A rancher spoke about how Preston had trained his horses and become a trusted friend. A young man talked about how Preston had given him his first job, teaching him the horse business. A mother thanked Preston for supporting the school that had educated her children. Zelda sat in the front row, surrounded by her family, listening to the outpouring of love for her husband. When it was her turn to speak, she stood slowly and faced the crowd. "Preston Calloway was the best man I have ever known," she began, her voice steady despite her tears. "He was kind without being weak, strong without being harsh, loving without being possessive. He saw the best in everyone he met and helped them become their better selves. He took a chance on a schoolteacher he barely knew, and together we built a life beyond anything I could have imagined. I will miss him every day for the rest of my life, but I will never regret a single moment we spent together. He was, and always will be, the greatest gift I have ever received." Preston was buried on the hill where he and Zelda had spent so many evenings watching the stars. A simple headstone marked his grave, with an inscription that read, "Preston Marcus Calloway. Beloved husband, father, grandfather, friend. He found his light and followed it home." Zelda lived for another 12 years after Preston's death. She continued teaching, though she finally retired fully at age 70. She spent her remaining years surrounded by family, watching her grandchildren and great-grandchildren grow, maintaining the library she had built, and keeping Preston's memory alive through stories. Every clear night, Zelda climbed the hill to Preston's grave and sat beside it, watching the stars. She talked to him about her day, about the children and grandchildren, about the changes in Loveland. She found comfort in feeling close to him there, under the vast sky that had witnessed the beginning and end of their love story. In the summer of 1932, at the age of 72, Zelda passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her family buried her next to Preston on the hill, under a headstone that read, "Zelda Marie Calloway. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, teacher, she was the brightest light." The town of Loveland mourned the loss of the woman who had shaped it so profoundly. The school held a special ceremony honoring her legacy, and the library was officially renamed the Zelda Calloway Memorial Library. Her children and grandchildren ensured that her memory, and Preston's, would never be forgotten. Years later, on summer evenings, people in Loveland would sometimes see a young couple sitting on the hill at the edge of town, watching the stars together. The hill became known as a place for lovers, where promises were made and futures planned. And on particularly clear nights, when meteors streaked across the sky, People said you could feel the presence of Preston and Zelda Calloway, still watching the stars together for all eternity. Their love story became legend in Loveland, told and retold to new generations. The tale of the cowboy who stopped in town by chance and met the brave schoolteacher who saved his life. The story of how they fell in love under the stars and built a life together that touched countless lives. The reminder that sometimes the most important journeys are not the ones we plan, but the ones we take when we follow our hearts. The school Preston helped save still stands in Loveland, now a historic building and museum honoring the town's history. The library Zelda dreamed of expanded over the years, becoming a cornerstone of the community. The horses Preston bred became the foundation of several respected lines across Texas. Their 5 children all lived long, successful lives, passing on the values their parents had instilled in them. But more than any building or business or bloodline, Preston and Zelda's true legacy was the love they shared and the example they set. They showed Loveland what it meant to fight for what mattered, to stand by your partner through all of life's challenges, to build something meaningful that would last long after you were gone. They proved that one chance encounter could change everything, that choosing love over fear was always the right decision, and that a life lived with purpose and passion was a life worth celebrating. And so the story ends where it began, on a hill under the stars, where a cowboy once found a schoolteacher stargazing alone and realized she was the brightest light he had ever seen, where they fell in love and promised to face the future together, where they were eventually laid to rest, side by side, their love eternal as the stars they had watched together for so many years. The brightest lights in Loveland's sky shining on forever.